Hi everyone, this is a short practice. We'll work on moving from crow pose, Bakasana, to Ekapada Koundinyasana 2, which I don't really have an English name for. So let's just start right away. Begin in downward facing dog position. Place your hands near the front of your mat. Step your feet back. Actively push down through your hands. Press your hands both down and forward. Bend your knees slightly and tilt your sit bones high into the air. Actively push your arms straight. With your sit bones tilted high into the air to arch your low back, begin to push your legs straighter without rounding your back. So your legs may not go all the way to straight if you don't have that flexibility, and that's a-okay. On an inhale now, lift your right leg back behind you in the air. With the leg back behind you, keep your leg straight and attempt to lift the leg in line with your torso and your arms. Spread your toes and lift through the muscles of your inner thigh up towards the ceiling. So the leg is strong and active, and it's not just the foot lifting into the air with the knee bent, but it's the entirety of the thigh rising the leg up high. On an exhale, bring your knee in towards your nose, and then inhale, lift your leg back again. Do that 2 more times. Exhale, curl in, knee to nose, and then lift your leg back. And then last time, knee in, and then leg back. Technically speaking, 1 more time, but just use that to step your foot forward, lower your back knee down, and wiggle your foot off to the edge of your mat. I sometimes like to have a block for this one. It's just lizard pose, where you can bend your elbows and sink down lower. Some can bring their elbows down to the floor really easily. For me, it's nice to just be in a midway position on the elbows for lizard. This is really just a warm-up to prep the hips. If you want a little bit more intensity, you're welcome to tuck your back toes and lift your knee. As I say, it's more prep. It's nice to just move the hips both forward and back, and even a little bit side to side, just to work out any kinks, any areas of stiffness. Okay, then rise up, plant your hands, and push your way to downward facing dog position again. Have the hands as wide as your shoulders, with your fingers spread evenly, and separate your feet as wide as your hips. If you need an exact measurement, just look at your hips and then approximate how wide your hips are with your feet. With your knees bent, push your feet and knees energetically to the side at the same time as you tilt your sit bones high up into the air. Try to broaden and widen the sit bones. And then push the hands forward as you push the heels towards the floor. On your next inhale, lift your left leg back behind you. Notice the difference between just lifting the leg up, especially when you stack the left hip up and over the right hip, versus keeping your hip square, lifting through the inner thigh. So it's the entire muscular strength of the leg that lifts the leg up high. As you push your arms straight, lift the leg higher. And then on an exhale, curl in, knee to nose. And again, lift your leg back. And then knee to nose. And again, leg back and knee to nose. Then swing your leg back. This final one is the step through. Step your left foot forward. You can even step it to the outside of your hand right to begin with. And then pause on fingertips. You're welcome to lower onto your elbows right away, or even stay up on your hands and just move your hips forward and back, just slowly prepping the body. And if you have a block handy, the block can be helpful, especially in some standing positions like triangle and side angle that we'll do, or in a couple of seated positions as well. But you can lower down onto your elbows on the floor or on a block and just move the body around. As before, if you lifted your back knee, lift your back knee again. So the point of practice today is to go from crow pose into Koundinyasana 2. So we're skipping 1. 1 is actually the twisted version. Some find 1 harder than 2, which is the same for me with my grades. Grade 1 was much more difficult than grade 2. Okay, if you use the block, remove it, rise up, and then this time instead of going to down dog, just hold plank position. Actively push your hands down. Keep the hips at about the same height as the shoulders. Push your hands away from each other. Lift your chin slightly. And then on an exhale, bend your elbows and slowly lower all the way down to the floor. Point your toes back behind you. Lift your shoulders as high as your elbows. And then on an inhale, rise up. Push your hands down. Pull your hands back to your hips. Lift your shoulders up, move your shoulders back, lift your chin, look forward, and then on an exhale, slowly lower yourself back down. Before rising to plank, we'll try Chaturanga Dandasana, 4-limbed staff pose here from the belly. So keep the hands pushing down, lift your shoulders as high as your elbows, tuck your toes, lift your knees, and lift your thighs. Then on an exhale, big push with your hands, and then lift your chest and hips about 5 centimeters away from the floor. Pause and hold. Hear the panic in my voice. That is not artificial. This is not acting. This is real. This is a real situation. And then lower all the way down to the floor. Woo! Koundinyasana 2 probably requires you to be able to hold Chaturanga for about 5 to 10 seconds. If you can't do that, the arm balance just might not be there for you. Skip to another video. This time, instead of going into Chaturanga, just tuck your toes, push up to plank, and then press back, downward facing dog. Actively push the hands forward, tilt your sit bones high into the air. Make your torso long. With your next inhale, lift your right leg back behind you. This time, stack your right hip over your left hip. Lift the foot up as high as you can, and then bend your knee. And this is the yoga version of a yawn. Notice the tendency to try to lean the whole body to the side. Try to stay square with your shoulders. Lift the right knee up high. Push your left heel down. And then square your hips. And step your foot forward between your hands. Turn your left foot to the left. And then I like to use a block. I just put it to the outside of the shin. Left hand to the hip, and then push your front leg straighter for triangle pose. So the block just makes it a bit more accessible. Hand to the hip is a great way to do the pose without focusing too much on overstretching the arms. Of course, you can make it a true triangle by reaching the arm up into the air. Lots of versions for triangle. I like the long stance version. In this long stance version, begin by pulling your feet towards each other and even lifting and spreading your toes. As you gain more strength by pulling the feet in, try to keep that strength but do the opposite and push your feet away from each other. And then bring your toes down, twist fuller. Actively lengthen through the crown of your head. Find some expansiveness. And if your arm is up in the air, actively reach the arm up as you push the hand down. One more breath in, and then turn to the floor. Bring your hand down, and then lower your left knee down. With your left knee down, move your hips back, and then lift your front toes for half splits position. From here, you could use your block to just help yourself hold the position up a little bit higher. Instead of rounding your spine and trying to tuck your head to your knee, bend your front leg and then try to move your sit bones back. then push your legs straighter, and then finally begin to bow forward. It's a last stage position to bow forward, but bowing while maintaining as best as you can the natural curve of the low back, just so that you emphasize more stretch through your hamstring as opposed to stretch through your back. Okay, then bend into your front knee, move forward, plant your hands, and step back to plank pose. This next one's a trick. That's foreshadowing. Be ready. I'm going to trick you. By trick, I mean chaturanga up to plank. On an exhale, lower down halfway, pause, hold, 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 and then lift back up and push back to downward facing dog. I told you I was going to trick you. Inhale, lift your left leg back behind you, and then stack your left hip over your right hip. Push your outer right heel back, lift the foot higher, and then bend your knee. Stack your left hip over your right, lift the left knee up high, push forward with your left hand, get more of a stretch through your side body, and then square your hips and step your foot forward between your hands. Turn your right foot to the right, and if you use the block for triangle, just use the block again, and then push your front leg straighter, twist to the right. And then as you push the leg straight, option to reach your arm up into the air. Lift and spread your toes, push your feet out, get a full stretch. You're always welcome to go lower down with your hand flatter to the floor or lower on your block. And of course, you can go wider with your stance as well. Actively reach and lengthen. And then on your next exhale, turn to the floor, bring both hands down, square your hips, lift your back heel, and then lower your knee. Move your hands back and begin to straighten your front leg. Again, just a half splits position. You want more of an active version. Then rise up with your arms, take a deep breath in, and then exhale, bow forward like you're putting a volleyball on your foot. And again, up, and then bow, and just one more to keep that activity so it's not just a passive position. And a new fashion statement, volleyball shoes versus regular shoes. They'll definitely provide more bounce, opportunity to bump any negativity out of your life. In this half splits position, option to start to round in once you've got your capacity. And breathe deeply. So the holding of the pose is the gateway to getting further into poses later on. Okay, and then bend into your front knee, plant your hands, step back, plank pose. And then as before, lower down halfway. The trick, it's called a push-up. And then push up, and then press back, hop forward into a squat position. So the prerequisite for being able to do crow to Koundinyasana 2 is that you have to be able to do crow, Bakasana. So Bakasana is helpful if you squeeze in with the knees, squeeze in with the feet, and then resist back with the arms. And you can feel that even in a squat position if your hands are together. And then you push the elbows out, but squeeze the knees in. And when you feel that resisting pressure, notice that's where the strength gets harnessed in your core, but also just your legs. The legs are really powerful for inversions and arm balances. So bring your hands down, squeeze the knees in, lean forward, and then lift one foot, then the other foot up. Pull your knees in, push your arms straighter, look slightly forward, hold strong. This is not a 2-minute hold. And then lower your feet, sit down into the squat position. Then lower your heels, push your legs straighter, and bow forward. On an inhale, lengthen for a halfway lift, hands to the tops of your shins. And then exhale and bow in. We'll hold the next one. Inhale, lift and lengthen with your hands to the tops of your shins. Push your shins forward into your hands. And as you push your shins forward, move the tops of your thighs back so that you get a little arch in your low back. That's stage one. Stage two, place your hands to the outside of your knees. Push your knees out into the resistance of your hands. And then as you push your knees out, feel your glutes get stronger. Try to broaden your sit bones. And then push your legs straighter as you bow forward. Halfway lift one more time, just one breath. Inhale, lift and lengthen. Try to do the push of the knees forward and knees out all in one breath. Exhale, bow in. And then step your left foot back behind you. Turn your left foot out to the side, setting up for side angle pose. So a more deep version of the pose is keep your right hand to the floor outside of your foot. Again, you could use a block at the 3 different settings, high, medium, or low, or just keep the hand to the floor. If it's still a little bit out of reach right now, just go forearm to your thigh. So lots of options. Doesn't matter. No one's keeping score at home unless you have a family member or a pet that's watching you and silently judging you. You definitely see that with cats. Twist fully to the left and then reach your left arm towards the front of your mat. Extended side angle, Koundinyasana. Push the feet in opposition to each other. Reach and extend your your left arm, the correct arm, the arm you write with if you are left-handed, forward. And then pause and hold. So building strength. And then just building fire and building heat. In order for a chemical reaction to occur, sometimes all you need is that fire and the heat, which comes from holding the position. Going into standing splits pose, bring your left hand down, lift your back heel, push off of your foot, lift it into the air. On an inhale, bring your knee in, and exhale, extend your leg out. Again, knee in, and then leg out. And one more time, knee in, and then leg out. Pause and hold the position, or use your right hand to hold your right ankle, so the lower ankle, the standing ankle, and then really test your balance. Use your left hand to hold your right ankle as well. And you can begin to feel parts of your body you didn't even know were engaging, turning on and off. And those muscles just automatically adapt without thinking, and it allows us to walk and maneuver and balance throughout the day. And it gives us more time to focus on the more meaningful muscles in our lives, like our biceps and our ability to show off how strong we are in our arms by toning our biceps. If you are unaware of sarcasm, that's sarcasm, because it's these muscles in your ankle that are so important in everyday life. Lower your left foot down, bow over your legs, standing forward fold. Inhale, lengthen your spine, lift up halfway. You could even keep your fingers on the floor. Exhale, fold, and then step your right foot back, side angle pose, second side. Right hand to your hip. Begin to twist to the right. Finding practices that focus more on functionality, I believe, is super important. Functionality means that it applies to everyday life, or some aspect of everyday life, and some beneficial use. Swing your right arm towards the front. Of course, having big biceps can be quite beneficial too. I'm not complaining myself here. Actively reach and extend long. You could go hand flatter to the floor. I can do that, but I feel it takes a little bit of the freedom out of the pose for me, which is a good reminder. Just because you can do something doesn't always mean you should. Standing splits pose, touch your hands down, lift your back heel, push off your foot, lift it into the air. And then on an inhale, bring your knee in, and then extend your leg back. knee in, and extend your leg back. And last time, knee in, extend your leg back, pause and hold, or hold on to your ankle with your left hand. Option to hold on to your ankle with your right hand as well. Holding strong. Allow the wiggles to happen, which actually, if you're a parent of young children, you might question that comment. Or you're watching from Straya. And then lower your right foot down, bow over your legs. Halfway lift, lengthen. And then exhale and bow in. Turn your feet out and then sit down into a squat position. So prerequisite for this crow Koundinyasana transition is, of course, crow, Bakasana. We did that one just a few poses ago, so it's an arm bounce. It's one of the baseline arm bounces. It's actually quite effortful. Some of the other arm bounces aren't as effortful, but you have to be in the pose and then find a combination of moving one leg. I'll show with the left leg first, forward a little bit as the right leg goes back, and then specifically the head, the face gets closer to the floor. We haven't done a lot of core work because you need the core. So we've done minor stuff. Chaturanga is core work. Those push-ups are core work, but not so much that we've toasted ourselves. So maybe watching me or following along, I'll give you a bit of extra time to play around. But it's crow pose, lifting up, and then the transition here is the left leg starts to go forward as you get lower down, and the right leg goes back, and then extend the leg forward. And then the right leg, the higher you lift the right leg, the easier the pose becomes. And then you can move through a flow once you're done and hop back. Okay, simple as that, pretty easy. If when you're going for the Koundinyasana you need a little bit extra help, in this case if it's the left leg forward, you can use your right elbow to prop up your hip. We'll just show that with the Koundinyasana pose, where you can prop up your hip with your elbow to then lift the leg up. The true form of the pose showing here is that the elbow is free and then it's a low to the floor. If you have any scratch and sniff stickers, it's nice to place right there. Give it a little scratch. Have a big breath in. It's very, very close to the floor. So you can set yourself up for the second side or retry the first side. I'll just demonstrate from a different position. You'll see the back body of me on this one, and I'll switch legs. But an opportunity to potentially just pause and play around with it. If you've been doing crow pose for a year or two, you have this in you. If crow is one that's challenging for you, then just skip ahead, move along. So just seeing me from the back side, the higher you lift the back leg, the easier the pose becomes. Setting up for crow pose, and then it's a transition of both the right leg out and forward, head lower to the floor, and then left leg back and high into the air. And then move through a flow. Back to down dog. And then you can jump it back into the squat position. So don't be afraid to try. Option, of course, to use and prop the elbow up. An option in that Koundinyasana to even use the side of your head. So I'll do this one with the left leg forward, right elbow will prop. And then you can even use the side of your head to the floor to lift your leg up. Some just need that extra bit of help. It's nice to just get the general form of the pose, and then as you get the form and shape of it, you get stronger in that position, and eventually you don't need to use your elbow anymore. If you're really strong and crow's easy, don't use the elbow. You don't need it, I promise you. You're getting strong enough already. Once you're complete, if you need to pause it and practice a bit more, but we'll go right back to downward facing dog and set up for pigeon pose. So here in down dog, just slide your right shin forward for pigeon. Walk the back toes back a little bit. Rise up onto fingertips. So you're in an upright shape position. And then the focus will be actually just to hold this position here. If you're just like, oh man, I don't want to do that, then just lower down onto your elbows. For some people, when you hear the word pigeon, it means that you're just going to lie down and start salivating. So drool coming out of your mouth as you enjoy the sensation of the hip opener. For others, it's a pretty intense position, rising up for a little bit of a back bend. And the nice thing about pigeon is you're almost in chaturanga. So to switch to the second side, you're welcome to bring your hands down and then just whoosh, quickly jump the right foot back. Move through a quick flow. Push back to down dog. And then bring your left shin forward. Rise onto fingertips, walk the right foot back, and then stay upright again. You just have to be in a bowed in position, go for it. Not gonna get upset here, no way. For all those watching that are also yoga teachers, I think that's the evolution of being a yoga teacher. When you begin, you must have everyone do exactly as you say, and then eventually you start to say the opposite of what you said every year, and you realize it's really hard to understand what teachers want you to do. So it all ultimately comes down to what feels right for you, what feels the best. If it works, it wins. So switch to the first side pigeon. Again, you can option to go through that flow to chaturanga, lifting into your back bend, and then right shin forward, having that long stance position. It can be even helpful to be in that upright position using a block to help balance. I'm going to show how it can help balance as you grab your back thigh. So bend your knee and hold your foot. And then just by having the block beside you, don't have to reach far to the floor as much. If you want to go for mermaid, merman, or where I live in British Columbia, Canada, we are quite gender neutral. So mer person, mer people are great people. Go there, or even into the full position. If you can hold the foot behind your head, you've obviously got strong ability already. Final stage, test to see if you can balance and lift your right arm up into the air. If you want to do that flow through chaturanga, go for it. I'm just going to show a little bit easier, which is just to go straight back, downward facing dog. Trying not to take many breaks, and then just going back into that upright pigeon. Again, the advantage of the block, it just makes it a little bit easier to stay upright and grab your ankle or your foot. You will likely feel this as a stretch through the front of your thigh. So I mentioned drool in the bowing forward version. For some, this position is the drool pose. So the drool is the good stretch. Just as before, you can test your balance. If you want to eventually hold the foot over your head, you'll have to be able to first hold your foot behind you and then lift the left arm up into the air. Okay, and then bring your hand down. And then push back, downward facing dog. On this one, just hop forward, but onto your shins. So it's just like that. And then rise into a kneeling position. Place your hands to your hips. Point your elbows back. Puff up your chest, lift your chin, and then start to lean back as you move your hips forward. First one is just a test, see where you're at, and then come all the way back up. Take a momentary pause, sit onto your heels, bring your hands on your thighs. And then rise up again. This time, as you lean back and move your hips forward, you're welcome to touch your heels with your hands. Move your hips forward, lift your chin, lean back. Deep breath in. My favorite is to look straight up. Some people look forward and others lift the chin and look back behind them. So just find the place that feels most empowering for you. Nothing is right or wrong, just a little different, which is how my mom and dad used to describe me. Push off your heels and slowly rise up, and then just swing your legs off to one side. Sit on your mat and join the bottoms of your feet together for bound angled pose, Baddha Konasana. It can be nice to sit up onto a block for this one. And then we'll do two versions of the pose in the pose. So the first is bring your heels in close to the front of your pelvis. Even slide your hands behind you, lift your hips, and then move your butt back slightly. Push your knees out to the side and puff up your chest. And then you can stay there or begin to round in and hook your elbows to the front of your shins. And then if you do this position, but then you lift your hands with your palms face forward, does that remind you of a pose? Yeah, it's crow pose, but the more mellow version of crow pose, also known as sitting. And then just rise up. That wasn't necessarily the second variation. The second variation will be feet a little bit more forward. And then this is where you can go for a dive with your arms under your shins, bow in, hold the tops of your feet, and then bring your forehead towards your feet. And then come all the way up. You may want to stay on your block or not use the block. It'll be baby cradle seated. Some like to have one leg forward. Others keep the leg in a little bit of a bent knee position, like a cross-legged position for one leg. So just pick and choose. I'll just show with the straight leg first and maybe switch on the other side. Hold your left foot, pull your knee back, and then kick your foot forward and pull your knee back. And then cross the shin in front of you. See if you can wrap your inner right elbow crease around your foot and then your left elbow crease around your knee. And then just rock your baby. Try to lift the foot up higher. Push the foot into the inner crease of the elbow. Move your left knee forward as you bring the right foot, the left foot towards the right shoulder. The foot you'd write with if you were left-footed and could write with your feet. This is a great pose to check to see if you can literally scratch your forehead with your toes. That's so gross. Make sure that you wash your toes before you touch your face with your toes. And then another version, if you're just not quite flexible enough, is forklift arms, where you go under the shin and then pull the shin in. And the benefit there is that you don't have the loosey-goosey ankle joint causing any twist to the knee, and the focus is primarily on the hip. Okay, and then second side. And I'll just show you could have the knee bent instead. Hold your foot, pull your right knee in, kick your foot forward. And for some, if one side's a little bit stickier than the other, you may have to do this quite a bit longer. This is my less flexible side, which is a negative way of saying that this is my stronger leg. So even the baby cradle's tough, and I actually prefer the forklift arm where and then pull the shin in, lift up, push the foot forward, try to pull the foot closer towards the left shoulder in this case. And then it's called baby cradle because you can rock a little bit from side to side. Another one, if you don't like the forklift arms, is just holding your foot with one hand and the knee with the other, giving a little bit of a rock. And then just to finish, we'll do some mindful breathing for maybe a minute tops. So just come to a comfortable seated position. Place your hands on your thighs. Sit tall. Lift your shoulders up and back. Lift your chin. Breathe deeply in through your nose. And exhale completely out your nose. Again, breathe in, be expansive and full. And then exhale, let it go, contract, shrink, and descend. Inhale, rise, be buoyant and fluid. And exhale, be earthy, grounded, and solid. Continue those mindful breathing in and out. And as you pay attention to each inhale and each exhale, what aspects, what qualities are you harnessing with your breath? Do you feel expansive with your inhale or grounded with your exhale? Or something else that isn't necessarily encouraged by me? Influence yourself through yourself. You are welcome to stay in this mindful breathing for as long as you want. Namaste.